So, Anthem, where to start? Before I begin, I will say that I went into this with no expectations. I hadn't been following the development, I didn't even know BioWare was working on a new title. My YouTube feed simply lit up with Anthem news last week and news about a free open demo that was coming up. So I thought to myself, well, it's a free demo, why not? I didn't even know whether the game was an MMORPG, a co-op, or what. I just knew I could fly around in an Iron Man suit and blow things up. I was impressed with Anthem almost immediately. Sure, the demo had a number of bugs and it certainly wasn't perfect, but I haven't had this much fun in a video game in a very long time. The movement was very fluid and intuitive. I can't really explain why the movement feels so good, but hopefully you'll see what I mean from watching the gameplay. It just feels really good. The abilities felt rewarding and potent without being overly strong as to cheese the game. I did see a lot of other people complaining that it took too long to kill things, but honestly, if you use your abilities right, you can kill things really fast. It's just, I feel like a lot of people were playing it like a typical boots on the ground shooter, which is where the criticism comes from, since this game is really an action RPG and needs to be played as one. Anthem has 4 javelins in it, which are basically classes. I only got the chance to play the Ranger and Interceptor javelins in the demo. The Ranger being more of a jack-of-all-trades class, and the Interceptor is basically a thief from Guild Wars, but with significantly less teleports and a lot more zoom. I enjoyed the Interceptor more. It felt a lot more clutch and rewarding. However, the Interceptor is very squishy, and you have to be very mindful of your positioning when playing it, which I like. I like the challenge. The Interceptor is melee focused, which creates an interesting dynamic because the squishiness prevents you from being able to brawl. However, since melee attacks in this game do stagger and interrupt the enemies, you can still get into a big melee fight as long as you keep rotating your melee hits across the enemies to keep them from getting their casts off. Because if they get their casts off, you're just going to get wrecked. The demo was pretty sparse on content. There was only a couple story missions and a stronghold, which is basically just a dungeon or a fractal, and a limited section of the open world. For the most part during the demo, I just spammed the stronghold on hard difficulty, which, despite being really repetitive, actually kept me engaged for the entire weekend. Which I found pretty surprising, as I typically get burned out of repeatedly running the same PvE content, but it was challenging enough that it was just really fun to do it over and over again and just try and hone my skills on it. I didn't do too much of the open world, but from what I saw, the open world content works more or less like Guild Wars 2 dynamic event system, where you just kind of wander around and then suddenly things spawn. And world bosses happen and all that stuff. Although I didn't get to do too much of it. There was some server stability issues when I was trying to do the open world during the demo, so... Now, there were... While I absolutely enjoyed the demo, there were a few glaring issues. The first is there was way too many load screens. I don't mind having load screens at the beginning of a mission, but when you have load screens in the middle of the mission, or simply entering a cave, or worse, a load screen to simply change my loadout, it gets quite tedious. I'm gonna guess that this is probably because Anthem was built on the Frostbite engine, which is probably one of the most advanced engines in terms of graphics, but it's also very much the Battlefield engine. It's a game engine that was designed for instanced arcade shooters, not for an action RPG with open world elements. And I think the loading screen problem is very much a reflection of that. Has pretty much every Frostbite title I've ever played has had some very long load screens. The developers did say that the loading screens will be much shorter on the live version. They've apparently got some optimizations or whatever in place for the live version that it'll be better than it was on the demo. The second issue I've had is there's no text chat in this game. Seriously, you can't type a message to your group mates, you can't whisper people. If you have a question, you can't ask the general chat because there is no general chat. There is a voice chat functionality, but it's only for group mates. So if I wanted to simply chat with someone that is online but not in my group, you'd have no options. You would have to use either Discord or some other third-party chat system. This really inhibits the social aspect of the game really hard, which I think is a big problem, particularly since Anthem is definitely pushing the group and co-op gameplay. The developers did state on Reddit that the lack of the chat has to do with a US law that came into effect back in 2010. A law called the CVAA was passed that governs accessibility in telecommunications service. However, due to how the law was written, the law was written with more traditional forms of communication in line, things like smartphone, Skype, and the like. However, due to how the law defines what a telecommunication service is, it does apply to video games. Now, video games were given an immunity from this, but that immunity ended at the end of 2018, which means everything coming out in 2019 and beyond must be compliant, which means the game's chat systems must provide accessibility options for people that are blind, deaf, mute, or cognitively impaired. Anthem was originally supposed to come out in 2018, so I think the developers really were planning on not having to deal with this law, but since the launch got pushed back to 2019, they now have to deal with complying with this law. So that may be why the chat isn't there. I mean, on the other hand, they do have a voice chat, which would be compliant, although based on my reading of the law, and I'm not a lawyer, so this could be completely wrong, systems that are implemented before the cutoff date at the end of 2018 don't have to be compliant. So if BioWare had gotten the voice chat implemented before 2018 was over, they wouldn't have to have the voice chat compliant with the law, but if their chat system wasn't finished, the chat system would have to be compliant. So I guess that's how that's working. I'm not a lawyer. I don't entirely understand exactly how the CVAA works. But basically, the developers did not put chat in, so you can't chat with people, and that's a problem. Regardless of the law, the developers really do need to implement a chat, even if that does mean that they have to dump resources in developing all those accessibility features for the blind, deaf, mute, and cognitively impaired people. An online multiplayer co-op with no chat it's a major problem. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, I don't even know how you would even maintain like a social game without a text chat, because it's so much more convenient than trying to like get people in Discord, which is not convenient at all. And I mean, how do I even get people in Discord if I don't have a chat? Because I can't just send them a Discord link because there's no chat to send them a Discord. Like, I don't understand how this is supposed to work. Regardless of these aforementioned flaws, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is basically the most fun I've ever had in a very long time in a video game. And it was definitely a really good break from the frustrations that is trying to play Guild Wars 2 right now. So it's something I'm definitely going to look forward to playing when it comes out, and I've honestly been having some like Anthem withdrawal since the demo ended. So yeah, I can't wait for it to launch, and this is definitely going to be something I'm going to be sinking a lot of time into.